but there are ways to manage your risk, and that's what it becomes about. And you would have heard, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Why that's such an important investing term. It's almost like a cliche, but it's really just diversification. It's saying that if you invest and spread your money across more things, if one of those things hits a snag and doesn't pay out, go where you think it was going to go, within those other four, you've spread your risk.
Yeah.
And it means that all your money's not riding on one thing. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing is really looking at your time frame, and that is really typical that markets go up and down and things happen in cycles. And but when you look over the long term, things usually smooth out. And so, but time frame is a really important factor in how you're managing your risk. If you need that money and you need it there next week, maybe it's not maybe the money to put into investing. So I think it is just really going, what's the tool for the job? What do I need to get out of this?
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today, Sonya Williams, co-founder and co-CEO of Sharesies, here to talk about the blueprint to financial empowerment.
Sonya, welcome back.
Yay, thanks for having me back.
So today, it's been a while since we've done a bit of a Shares 101 type episode and really break down some concepts that, it's great to talk about revolving credits and buying investment properties and iron butterfly spreads and all these complicated things. But people jump to the really exciting stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to go back to the basics and make sure we know what we're doing. So, Mike, where do we want to start?
All right, let's rapid fire some questions.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. So let's start right at the start. Sharesies. What are shares, and how would you define them for someone that's new to investing? What is a share?
Yeah, I would say a share is a piece of a company. So that's really the bite-sized answer.
Sonya, so the amount of times I talk to somebody, stay with me, Mike, because I think that's a really important point, right? So Kiwis. We know Kiwis love property. Part of your Sharesies' whole ethos is about changing the way people think. How often, it irritates me. I want to shake people when they tell me this stuff, where they go, it's not tangible. It's not like bricks. I can't touch it.
Into the ether.
Does that irritate you as much as it irritates me?
It doesn't irritate me because
you're a better person than me.
I felt that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what shares were, because you hear the word shares and you don't necessarily think about it as people go to work there. People, I see the products they buy and, they make and sell, and there's that office. I think when you start to break it down, shares can seem like quite a shares in itself can feel like a really what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of it's just like an idea.
Yeah.
But then when you actually go, it's a share of something, and it's the same way. If an income is often people's biggest source of wealth, and you wouldn't see that as intangible, that you go to work every day.
Yeah.
That's something that happens. So I think it's just about breaking it down.
Yeah. I think the more I've heard people say it, the more they use, instead of saying it's not tangible, what they're saying is they don't understand.
Yeah. That's exactly
a house
that is exactly it.
A house is really simple, right? You can see it, somebody lives in it, in exchange for it, they pay you some money. It's a pretty simple concept to get your head around. But you're right, fundamentally, a company is just they are selling a product or they are selling a service to a consumer in exchange for money. And there are people that work there, they pay tax. And the idea is if there's some profit or the value of the company goes up, you're going to make some money. But because, like you said, not knowing what shares are in the past, it's just this mysterious
And I think
world.
the other part about housing is you already have that cost associated. You're going to have to pay for housing.
You gotta live somewhere.
Yeah. So you kind of know that you're going to spend some of your money on housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. A bit of that, I think a bit of that lack of understanding and how opaque it is was almost by design, right? In the past, and that is something Sharesies does a really good job of kind of cutting through, is the financial markets and the financial world was hidden behind an opaque wall, and you had to be at a certain threshold to access that. We've talked about that in another episode as well about just trying to sell a share, a while ago, is that was on purpose so that people could charge fees, right? Because you're you literally you don't understand this. So I don't really have to justify the fee I'm charging you to buy or sell these shares for you, because I just come at you with some complex jargon, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, fine, I guess this is the thing.
Yeah, I like to maybe it's like a naive thing, but like think that it wasn't from a bad place. Like that it was just hey, this stuff is like by design, like not by design, that it was by accident. That it's just that the people that knew about it are the people that created the system. And sometimes when you know about something, you don't know how that might be interpreted by someone who doesn't know about that thing. And then when you realize there's a bunch of people who don't know about something, you're like, oh, well, I can solve that problem for you. I can do it for you. And therefore now I've created value for you. But I do think it is really complex in itself, but I think we understand complex things every day.
Yeah.
Like there was a big sourdough, sourdough is very complex, but during COVID, there was like so many people making sourdough.
Absolutely, I was like, did we miss the sourdough crisis of last year or something?
It's like,
are we sourdough short?
Yeah. I was like, are we talking about bread? Is sourdough some investing strategy I've never heard of?
Like an iron sourdough spread?
Heard it.
Yeah. What's the long short on the sourdough portfolio?
Honestly, shout out to anybody who uses sourdough in investing strategy talking to mates.
Absolutely, yeah.
So why would somebody bake a sourdough? No, I'm joking. Why would somebody own a share? Like, why would you buy a share? Why buy a share?
Yeah, I think the most reason that people would invest is to grow money. And the idea, that why people invest in property is that you believe that value of the house will go up over time, but it also provides you with a place to live. The idea with shares is that you are giving that money to a company who will turn that money and will grow with it. And so how as a shareholder you would see some value in that is either they make a profit and they pay you a bit of the profit because you share that company with them, or the value of that company grows because they've reinvested their profits back in the business and done something that has now increased the value of the company.
Yeah. And then you can sell that at a later date for more money.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And then if we're looking at shares and in all investments, really, like we've talked about the property market as well, there is an element of risk associated with that. How would you explain risk to someone who's just starting to think about investing or learn about investing or considering making their first investment into the share market?
Yeah, I'd say that it is around uncertainty. And there are low risk assets or low risk investments that you can invest in. It's why, like with a savings account, you're given a rate of return. That's because there's less risk in that, but there will also be less upside. So risk and return are correlated. And so when you invest in a company is saying, we're going to do this or we make this much money, but they're saying in the future, we're going to do this and we're going to make this much money. And that's part of your strategy. But there's so many things that can come up along the way, some things that are just completely unseen. And so what risk really is around, you can have more upside. They can do exactly what they'll say they do and more. And therefore you'll share in the benefits of that. But they might also go through a really tough time or something might really knock them back and therefore they might not make as much money as they wanted over that time.
Yeah.
But I think, it's just really a way of saying that there's some unknowns and it's a way of accounting for that. And I think as an investor, I would say it's not about shooting for no risk because that's not possible. There is risk involved in everything we do. But there are ways to manage your risk and that's what it becomes about. And you would have heard, don't put all your eggs in one basket, why that's such an important investing term. It's almost like a cliche, but it's really just diversification. It's saying that if you invest and spread your money across more things, if one of those things hits a snag and doesn't pay out, like go where you think it was going to go, within those other four, you've spread your risk.
Yeah.
And it means that all your money's not riding on one thing. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing is really looking at your time frame, and that is really typical that markets go up and down and things happen in cycles. And but when you look over the long term, things usually smooth out. And so, but time frame is a really important factor in like how you're managing your risk. If you need that money and you need it there next week, maybe like it's not maybe the money to put into investing. So I think it is just really going, what's the tool for the job? What do I need to get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time with first home buyers where maybe Mike's got the infamous story where one of his clients was invested into crypto, didn't want to sell it, so his mum had to split him the deposit.
Yeah.
But that investing into the wrong asset, even though you might have a personal risk profile where you can tolerate ups and downs, your time frame does not allow you to. So if you are investing in shares or crypto or anything with volatility and you want to use the money in 6 months, well, you might not get a return. You might not like that you get a return. The most important thing is you end up with the amount of money you need to go and spend it on whatever it is.
Yeah. And then how would you kind of break down, I mean, when people are picking shares individually, they're looking at the individual risk of the share they're buying. How would you find is kind of the best way for people to do that when they're investing in companies on your platform?
Yeah, I think
because the property market kind of has a fairly homogenous risk profile of like retail. If I compare it to property, like the retail property market in New Zealand has a fairly homogenous risk profile. It's all just buildings on a tiny island in the South Pacific. Not every company is the same. And we may look at like, okay, Fonterra is a household name, or Fisher and Paykel is a household name. But that's not actually the underlying risk of the company. So how would you kind of advise people to pick the risk of the company? What's some good things they can look at to know what they're investing in?
Yeah, if we peel it back a little bit and go, like you touched on it around like property, like different asset classes. So that would be like property, like bonds, saving, they all have a different risk profile. And tools like Sorted, and that can give you an idea of like, if you've got $100, how should you split that $100 across these different risk profiles, based on your risk tolerance? I think it's really handy to just get a view of that and say, because it's kind of moving that mindset that it's all about one thing. It's about saying, if I need money today, can I get it? Because I need to, and do I have something there? And how am I kind of structured to support my overall goal? As well as my needs on the day. And then I think for the individual companies, it is about digging in and getting some information. Yeah. And I think like an annual report is a really great place to start. And, the cool thing about annual reports is like you might, if you're not an investor, we all have day jobs, we go and do other stuff. But there's so much in an annual report that's not just the numbers. The numbers tell a story, but also there's the story. And it's the story of someone saying, here's what my business does. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what I think are the risks that are in the way. And here's how we're going to manage them. And here's all the reasons, we're going to win. But here are the things that we are managing as risks to our business. That information's all there in an annual report. And that's a really cool way to get your finger on the pulse. And then often people do videos about it, or CEOs will talk about their companies and the risks. So even if you don't like reading annual reports, just watch a few videos and then read the annual report.
Who doesn't like to read the annual report on a Friday afternoon? And I think the really important thing there, Sonya, is if Sonya's going, hey, you should read some annual reports, and you go, I don't want to read some annual reports. My big thing to you would be you don't need to read the annual reports. That's why there are funds as another option instead of just investing into direct companies. And a fund is, instead of just investing in one company or picking 10 companies, you are investing into something where you might be invested into 1,000 companies or the top 500 companies in the US, where that it's a much broader stroke that you're investing into. And yes, there will still be volatility. There will be times it might drop 30%, but opposed to, just randomly picking stuff or going, I think you need to decide whether you want to be that person or not.
Yeah. And you don't have to decide that on day one.
Yeah.
No.
And I think if you're going from not investing to investing, then funds is a really good first step.
Yeah.
Because they're by design diversified.
Someone's done the hard work for you.
Yeah. And there's a range of great ones that are around that give you exposure to different things, and you can look for there can be a fund that's the US 500 and it's the top 500 companies in the US, just to give a flavor of what a fund might have in it. Or there's the NZ 50, which you get the top 50 companies in New Zealand.
Yeah.
One more
Turning
thing
over about $3 each.
But I think that's an important thing to touch on, though, that and what we see with our investors is it's not an and or, no, it's not an or, it's an and.
Yeah.
Because it is funds and something. Sometimes you're just actually, I really want to back this company. I believe in it so much, and I do want to get exposure to that. And what we find is most people are doing a bit of a bit of all of that.
Yeah,
like
they're not
funds.
mutually exclusive.
Yeah, funds
Yeah.
and
Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below.
While we're talking about risk, Sonya, and you touched on a little bit that everything has risk, I want to get your thoughts a little bit on like opportunity cost. So like people think, and like particularly say with term deposits, right? A lot of money slushing around in the banks, sitting in cash. And I would argue not all, but a decent chunk of it is a lack of education. And if everybody had the same education when it came to money, how much money would actually be sitting in the bank? What are your thoughts on like, so there is risk, taking too much risk, but what are your thoughts on not taking enough risk?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real problem, isn't it? And I think that you probably touched on something great with the lack of understanding, because it's like with KiwiSaver, you know, if you ask people, when we did research anyway, like 7 years ago on KiwiSaver, and we asked people what KiwiSaver was, I think it's gone a long way since then, you know, just to caveat with that. But it was like a savings account at Kiwibank. Like, I think the idea that it was shares wasn't necessarily front and center, or that it was an investment. Like, so if you've got KiwiSaver, you are an investor. You are investing in things. And I think you're right. It's like the opportunity gap is real.
Yeah. Because I mean, inflation is going to eat away at your money if you do not do something about it.
100%. So, Sonya, how would you advise investors to navigate downturns and recessions? What opportunities might they present in the market?
Yeah, and I think the first thing is to know that markets, it's completely normal for markets to go up and down, and there are downturns and recessions. They're really like normal part of investing and of how economies work. And so I think, you know, my answer to that would be around knowing that, and so being prepared for it, and then putting some great risk management techniques in place. And one of the things that we talk about is, you know, building great habits around money, that it's not just what's going on in the time, like right then and there in the market. It's around that longer lens. So build the habit and strategy that works for you. You know, people call this dollar cost averaging, that's the name, but really what that means is picking a set of companies or a set of funds or whatever you've chosen to invest in, picking an amount you want to invest, and just doing that same thing regardless of what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
And what that does is over time, it allows you, sometimes you're buying high, sometimes you're buying low, but overall the average price of that share, if you're in there for long enough, that will go up over time.
Yeah,
is kind of the idea. And so it is taking that long-term lens, and also then being able to say, like, if I've invested in these things, is whatever's going on in the market, has that actually changed? Is there new information, or is it just an environmental shift that's going on right now? Because sometimes it's affecting everything and everyone, and therefore that's actually that company is doing great in the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes, it might have, might be showing a lower share price or something like that for the moment. But actually, I believe in that strategy, and I've got nothing that is new information that makes me think that that's going any differently. And so part of it is saying, like, actually there's no new information. Other times it's like, oh, wow, this is a complete platform shift. I actually think this industry is not going to be the same. I'm getting out, you know? And that's the cool thing about being an investor, I reckon, is like you get to just philosophize, if that's a word, about the future and go, well, based on this information, what do I think is going to happen? And then put your money to work like that.
Yeah.
And so it's really about, does this information change the way you think about the future and that company's role in the future? And then talking about opportunities that can pop up with markets and recession is like, we're like by nature, we redesign, we evolve, we just work with the environment we've got. And so like new ideas and new industries are formed every day as a response to problems on the day. And I think that always keeps me like, even if things are going badly, I'm always optimistic for the future. Yeah. Because people change when things are bad, and people do things and people respond, and it can be enough for a call to action to inspire someone to do something. And next thing we know, a whole industry's emerged that we didn't even see coming.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to like bad periods or good periods, I think another fault is people just assume we live day by day, right? And we assume a cost of living crisis is going to last forever, or a tough market's going to last forever, or interest rates going to stay low, or interest rates going to stay high, or what we saw from like 2008 to 2020, good times are going to last forever, and that can impact
and the seasons of life. Like I've just come off being on parental leave, and one thing I didn't account for, like mentally, I knew I accounted for it financially.
It's good to hear, Sonya.
But was like that my bank account wouldn't go up. I was like, you get so used to your bank account going up and that being a good thing.
Yeah.
That as I saw it going, even though I'd like saved for it, like prepped, it was like, oh my God, like that emotional time where it's like, and it's just also, I think that kind of call out to also recognize and be generous with yourself, that you can go through seasons of life. And I needed to tell myself that was a season of life where my bank account would not go up. And I think if I was mentally prepared for that, it would, like, I'd be like, yeah, cool, this is exactly what I saved for, you know, or like, and I think that's that thing of, you know, not putting up your umbrella when it's raining. It's like, that's why it's there. Use the so I think you can get so hooked on that it's always growth, that it's also in times where it's like what we would encourage, because understand that things can get tight for different reasons and times in your life. It's like, think of like reducing, not stopping, because I do think that time and market and continuing on with your strategy is like a really important piece of it, because that's the other thing is often when the value's low, that's a really good time to be buying. And you don't want to just be buying when it's high.
Nice. All right, well, Sonya, I'm conscious you have a flight to catch and Mike can be an aggressive driver if he's running late, so we better get you out of here. The good thing is, I mean, in terms of these like when it comes to investing, these 101s, there's so much more we haven't touched on yet. So we'll definitely have to get you back on and to do some more things. Maybe Mike and I'll do a trip to Sydney to go do it over there.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
No, it was heaps of fun. And much thanks to Partners Life for sponsoring the episode. Please make sure to subscribe, review, and give us a like, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.